they never found all of her. And the part they found wouldn't stop singing. The town of Bayou Saint-Clair doesn't appear on most maps anymore. You won't find a gas station or a steeple, just a dirt road that gives up halfway to the water, and 40-some houses built on stilts above black mud that has never once dried out in living memory. The people there will tell you the swamp keeps what it takes. They say it the way other people say good morning. Flat. Certain. Like it isn't worth arguing about. I went down there in the autumn of 1998, working for an insurance company that no longer exists, sent to close a file that should have been simple. A 19-year-old girl named Cecile Aucoin had vanished. Her family had a small policy on her. Before they could collect, somebody from the home office had to drive out and confirm she was really gone. I confirmed it. I just never managed to explain it. And 27 years later, I still can't. So I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, in the order it happened to me. And at the end, you're going to know everything I know. Which, I'll warn you now, is not the same thing as understanding. I arrived on a Thursday, late, with the sun already bleeding out behind the tree line. The swamp at dusk does something to sound. It swallows it. You can shout, and the shout just stops a few feet from your mouth, like the air is too thick to carry it. I rolled my window down to ask directions from an old man fishing off a culvert, and when he turned to look at me, I forgot what I'd meant to ask. "You're the insurance man," he said. Not a question. "Word travels," I said. "Word's about all that can. Out here." He nodded down the road. "Aucoin Place is the last one, past the chapel. You'll smell the candles before you see the house." He was right. The whole road smelled of beeswax and something underneath it. Something sweet gone wrong. The way flowers smell sweet for exactly one day too long. The Aucoin house sat at the very end, where the road dissolved into a boat launch. Every window was lit. On the porch, a woman waited for me as if she'd been told the precise minute I'd arrive. Cecile's mother, Marguerite Aucoin. She had her daughter's photograph already in her hand, holding it out before I'd finished climbing the steps. "I want you to look at her face," she said, "so you understand you are not looking for a runaway." The girl in the photo was beautiful in the specific way that makes a small town nervous. Dark eyes, a half smile that seemed to be deciding whether you were worth it. And around her throat, I noticed it even then, a thin silver chain with a small pendant shaped like a bird. "She'd never take that off," Marguerite said, watching me notice. "Her grandmother's. She was buried in it. The grandmother, I mean." She paused. "Cecile wore the dead woman's necklace every day of her life. You remember that? Later, you'll want to remember that." I didn't know what she meant. I wrote it down anyway. "Silver bird. Grandmother's. Buried in it." I still have the notebook. The ink's gone brown, but you can read every word. Over the next 2 days, I talked to nearly everyone in Bayou Saint-Clair. And the first strange thing, was how much they agreed. Usually, when somebody disappears, the stories scatter. Everyone's got a different last sighting, a different theory, a different person they blame. Here it was the opposite. Every single person told me the same sequence of events, almost word for word, as though they'd practiced. And that sameness bothered me more than any contradiction could have. Here is what they agreed on. Cecile Aucoin was last seen alive on the night of September 14th, at the dance held in the old Thibodeau barn. She'd argued with a young man named Remy Landry, who'd wanted to marry her, and been told no. Witnesses said she left the barn alone around 11, walking toward the water, which everyone agreed was foolish. because the path to the water ran past the cypress stand the locals called the Drowned Church. I asked why they called it that. Nobody wanted to answer. Finally, the bartender, a heavy, quiet man named Dauphin, told me. 100 and some years back, he said, there'd been a real church out on that ground before the water rose. A flood took it in a single night. Took the whole congregation. A Sunday evening service, 31 souls, doors swollen shut so none of them got out. Now there was nothing but a ring of cypress trees standing in black water where the building had been. And on certain nights, Dauphin said, you could hear them, the congregation, still singing the hymn they'd been singing when the water came. Hymn, I said. Same one, every time. He wouldn't look at me. Shall we gather at the river? I'll be honest. I wrote it down to be polite. I'd heard ghost stories in a dozen backwater towns, and they were always the same. A way for people to make a frightening place feel like it had rules. I thanked him, and I didn't think about it again. Not until that night, when I heard the singing myself. My room was in the back of the only house that took boarders, a half-mile from the cypress stand. I woke a little after 2 in the morning. The window was open. I hadn't opened it. And on the air, faint, threading through the frog noise and the wind, there was a hymn. Voices, many of them, low and even, the way a congregation sings when they've sung the same words 10,000 times and don't need to think. Shall we gather at the river? I told myself it was a radio. I told myself it was the wind in the reeds, doing a trick my tired brain was finishing. I told myself a great many reasonable things, and I believed every one of them, right up until I noticed that the singing had words, and that the words were keeping time with something. A high, clear female voice, carrying the melody above the rest. A young voice. I did not sleep again. At first light, I drove to the boat launch, and I found a man willing to take me out to the Drowned Church for $40. His name was Octave, and he was maybe 17, and the only person in town who'd looked at me without that flat, swallowed-sound stare. He looked, instead, afraid. You heard it, he said before I'd said a word. That's why you're here this early. You heard her. I heard something, I said. He started the motor. It's been singing since the night she went. Before that night, the church only sang in storms. Now it sings every night. He throttled us out into the channel. My grandmother says the congregation's got a new voice. Says they've been one short for 100 years, and now they're not. I asked him what he thought. He didn't answer for a long moment. Then he said, I think the swamp doesn't take people. I think somebody gives them to it. And I think they've been doing it a long, long time. You have to see the Drowned Church to understand what it does to you. And I can only give you words, so I'll do my best. Imagine a ring of cypress trees, 20 or 30 of them, enormous, gray, standing in water so dark and still it works like a black mirror, so that each tree has a perfect twin hanging upside down beneath it. The Spanish moss comes down in curtains. The light, even at mid-morning, is the green-gold color of light under water. And in the center of the ring, where the old church floor must have been, the water is clear enough to see down a little way before the dark takes over. It is the most beautiful place I have ever stood. It is also the only place on this earth where my body has refused, outright, to go any farther, where some animal part of me planted its feet and would not be reasoned with. Octave cut the motor, and we drifted in on the last of the momentum, and in the silence, I heard him whisper a prayer in French, and then he said, "There," and pointed. caught on a low cypress knee, just above the waterline, turning slightly in the current, was a thin silver chain with a small pendant shaped like a bird. I reached out and took it. Cold. Heavier than it looked, and as my fingers closed around it, the surface of the water in the center of the ring, the still black water that had not moved this whole time, broke. One bubble, then another, as though far below something had exhaled. Octave had the motor going before I'd sat back down. He did not speak again until we reached the launch, and then he said only, "Don't tell them you found it. Whatever you do, don't let them know it came back up." Now, if you've been listening like a detective, you already have your suspects. And I want to lay them out honestly, because for a while, each one of them was, to my mind, the answer. Remy Landry, the rejected suitor, the obvious one. He'd argued with Cecile the night she vanished. He had the temper for it. I met him, and he was all raw nerve and grief. And when I mentioned her name, he had to leave the room. But Remy had been at the barn until well past midnight. 30 people swore to it. Whatever happened at the cypress stand, he wasn't there for it. Marguerite Aucoin, the mother. It troubled me how composed she was, how she'd known the exact minute of my arrival, how she'd pressed that detail about the necklace on me. Later, you'll want to remember that, as if she were arranging the pieces of a story she already knew the end of. But a mother who kills her daughter does not, as a rule, pay the premiums on a policy, and then summon an investigator to come dig. Dauphin, the bartender, who'd told the ghost story too smoothly. Octave, who'd known I'd heard the singing before I said so. The old man on the culvert, who'd known my business before I told him. And slowly, too slowly, I understood that I was thinking about it wrong. I kept looking for one murderer, one guilty face, in a crowd of innocent ones. But that flat, agreed-upon story everyone told me, that sameness. I'd taken it for a town protecting one of its own. What if it was a town protecting all of them? I did the unglamorous thing that real investigators do. I went to the parish records office, 2 towns over, in a building with air conditioning and fluorescent light, where the swamp couldn't reach me. And I asked for everything they had on Bayou Saint-Clair. It took the clerk an hour to find it all. And when I laid it out on the table, the pattern was so clean, it made me cold in that overcooled room. Every 20 to 25 years, going back as far as the records went, back past 1900, back to handwritten parish ledgers in French, a young person from Bayou Saint-Clair disappeared. Always in autumn. Always near the water. Never found. 1902, 1923, 1949, 1971, and now 1998. 5 names. Wide-spaced. Easy to miss, one at a time, the way you'd miss a single tree in a forest. But laid side by side, they marked out a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat, as steady as a hymn. And here is the detail that put a permanent crack in the foundation of how I understand the world. I pulled the original news clipping for the 1949 disappearance. A boy named Théophile, 16. And the article quoted a witness, a young woman who said she'd heard the boy singing out by the cypress stand on the nights after he vanished. The witness's name was Marguerite. The same age, the article said, as the missing boy, 16, in 1949, which would make Cecile's mother, the composed woman on the porch, somewhere north of 65, and I had stood close to her. I had looked into her face, and whatever age that face was, it was not 65. I went back to Bayou Saint-Clair one final time. I told myself it was to return the necklace, and close the file like a professional. That was a lie I needed in order to make my hands turn the wheel. Marguerite was on the porch, as if she'd never left it, as if she'd been waiting the entire time I was gone. The candle smell was thicker now. The light was going. I put the necklace on the rail between us. I watched her face. She did not look surprised. She looked, and this is the word I keep coming back to, she looked relieved. "It came back up," she said softly. "It always comes back up. The water keeps the child, but it gives back the things she loved most, so the mother has something to bury." She touched the silver bird with one finger. "My mother buried this when I gave her boy to the river. Then I wore it. Then my daughter wore it. Now I'll wear it again, until it's her daughter's turn." "You're telling me," I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine, "that you killed her." "I'm telling you the river is owed, and it has been owed since the night it took the church, and it does not forget a debt." She finally looked at me, and her eyes were very calm and very old. 31 souls drowned in that water, singing a hymn, mister. 31. Do you know what a thing like that becomes, left to itself for 100 years? It gets lonely, and a lonely thing that big will take the whole town, all at once, in one bad season, unless it's given one, freely, by someone who loves them. She picked up the necklace. "We don't lose our children to the swamp. We pay them to it, so the rest of us get to keep living above the water instead of in it." I asked her, God help me, I believed her enough to ask, why she'd called for an insurance man at all. Why invite a stranger to come asking questions? She smiled then. The same half smile from the photograph. Exactly the same. "Because every generation," she said, "someone has to witness. Someone from outside who will carry the story away and keep it true. The congregation needs to be remembered, or it gets restless." She stood. "You heard them sing. You'll never not hear it the rest of your life. That's the price of the witnessing. I'm sorry. I truly am. But now you'll never be able to tell yourself it didn't happen." Here's the part where I'm obligated to be honest with you, because you've come this far, and you deserve it. I cannot prove any of it. I can prove Cecile Aucoin existed and is gone. The file says so. I can prove the disappearances run back a century in a clean rhythm. The records are public. You could pull them yourself. I can prove I found a silver necklace on a cypress knee, because I have it still, in a drawer I don't open often. I cannot prove I heard singing. A tired man, in a strange place, hears things. I cannot prove Marguerite Aucoin was the same Marguerite from 1949. Common name, faded clipping, and a frightened mind connects dots that aren't really dots. I cannot prove she said any of what she said, because I was alone on that porch, and I did not have a recorder, and her words are only as reliable as my memory, which the years have had a long time to work on. A rational person, and I've spent 27 years trying to be one, looks at all this and says, a grieving, possibly unwell mother told a frightening story to an exhausted stranger who was already half drunk on swamp gas and folklore. And that stranger spent the rest of his life mistaking a coincidence and a feeling for a haunting. That is the reasonable explanation. I want you to hold on to it. I want you to have it. Because I don't anymore. Because here is the last thing. And then I'll let you go. I drove out of Bayou Saint-Clair that night, and I never went back. And the file got closed with the word undetermined. And the company paid the claim. And the world moved on, the way it does. But I kept the necklace. I don't know why. And every autumn, for 27 years. On a night in the middle of September, I don't mark the calendar. I never have to. My body just knows. I wake a little after 2 in the morning to the sound of a congregation singing a hymn I have never once sung in my life. And every year, there are more voices than the year before. And every year, faint and high and clear above the rest, leading the melody, the way she led that argument, and that half smile, and the whole town that loved her enough to give her away, there is a young woman's voice. She sounds happy. That's the thing I can't make peace with. After everything, she sounds happy. I've told you everything I know now. So the next time you hear water moving in the dark, out at the edge of some town that isn't on the map, where the road gives up before it reaches the trees, I want you to do just one thing for me. Don't walk toward the singing. And don't, whatever you do, let it learn your voice. Cécile Aucoin, 1979 to 1998. The river is still owed, and the congregation is still one voice short of full.